Hi everybody, my name is Andrea Goodwin and I'm going to be discussing the pros of emotional intelligence. The first pro that we came up with was empathy, and empathy is a sense of knowing what others are feeling without words. And this is so important because people don't like showing feeling a lot of the time, so if you're able to understand what a person is feeling without them necessarily saying it, a person is more likely to help others without them having to ask for help. The second pro that we came up with was that emotional intelligence is something that is learned and can continuously grow and develop, unlike intelligence, which is stable and sort of after a certain point levels off. Emotional intelligence a person can develop at any age, so this is beneficial to an adult who's entering the workforce that hasn't developed these skills as a child. With proper training, they will be able to develop these skills and implement them in a work setting. The third pro that we came up with was that people with emotional intelligence are more likely to stand out in a company, and this is important if you want to develop in not only your job title but within whatever company you're in. It was shown that 80% of the top performers in the company all had high levels of emotional intelligence. So this is showing you that it doesn't only take brains. Yeah, having brains may get you that job, but a high part of keeping that job and growing with that job is emotional intelligence and having self-awareness and tolerance and being able to relate to other people. So the fourth and final pro that we came up with was the influence that emotional intelligence can have on an organization's consumers. Daniel Goleman gave the example of when him and his wife went to the restaurant and he was sick and his waiter was so unresponsive to his needs and trying to help him find tea. But when the second waiter came along, that second waiter jumped at his needs and quickly offered him tea and whatever else he needed. And I think that this is so true when employees are in direct contact with customers. That interaction that they have is going to make an impact on the customers, and that impact is going to influence how that customer views the whole organization. And this is so important in getting return customers or just how an organization is viewed in general.
Hi, my name is Ashley Robinson, and I'm going to discuss some of the kinds of emotional intelligence, starting with the fact that we feel as a group that there's an increased pressure for math and science skills placed on kids. We feel like this is pretty much streamlined through school and sometimes even in the home, which in turn could kind of increase the violence rate and even the depression rate in kids, as they're not being really programmed to think about empathy and things of that nature. Which kind of then leads us into our next kind, is the fact that there isn't really, we feel that it's not fair in some ways that um, kids are expected as adults to behave in these ways when they weren't implemented as a kid. And the unfortunate part is that most employers don't have the capacity to really captivate or really invest in training or the resources to allow for these adults to really progress. Um, this type of skill requires much practice and repetition. And again, companies just don't have the resources. Another kind that we see is that a lot of the self-reported questionnaires um, has a high face validity, but they also have high fake ability. So there are issues with validity pretty much when you look at this emotional intelligence. There's not a very streamlined way of assessing this. And again, there have been times when companies will invest in the or the highly popular um, assessments, but they seem to lack validity. And sometimes, I mean, when reading studies, it's kind of misleading in regards to the claims of how successful it actually is for an organization. And it's basically because it's something that's pretty hard to assess or measure. So, yes, those are some of the cons that we see when speaking in terms of emotional intelligence.
After having viewed Daniel Goldman's video on emotional intelligence, I was a bit conflicted because of what I had learned last term regarding this topic and the validity issues that came with it. I do think, though, overall that teaching employees emotional intelligence and implementing these practices will make employees more well-rounded, aside from having intelligence alone. And teaching employees how to be more self-aware and how to be empathetic will better help their relationships with other coworkers and will also help management better relate to employees.
As far as my personal preferences, as far as emotional intelligence goes, I would say that I am highly in favor of emotional intelligence, and I feel that it is very much beneficial in the workplace, especially when considering leaders. I feel that there's a certain level of self awareness, self regulation, social skills, empathy, and motivation that leaders should embrace. As far as self awareness goes, I feel that one should know their strengths and weaknesses, especially if they are setting examples for those um, within the organization. I also feel that empathy is something that is very important. We want to make people feel included, and to do so, I feel that considering others' feelings is like the most important thing to consider or to kind of captivate as a leader. I feel that you also have to be extremely driven to achieve. So, with I mean, that leads into motivation. You have to be extremely motivated and you have to be able to motivate others. Um, and I mean, especially as a leader, I think that self regulation is important because you kind of have to control or redirect your own behaviors and emotions in order to live through the mission and goals of the company or what needs to get done at the present time. And of course, social skills are extremely important. Managing relationships is the utmost um, important characteristic of a leader. They need to be able to have certain gauges to see where people are in their their work progression as far as how things are working out even in their personal lives. So I, for one, feel that if we want to have great leaders, we should definitely emphasize emotional intelligence.